Mm. We are live, Ronnie. How are you today?
Yeah, I am grateful. And how are you doing, Yasheka?
I am well. I am well. I'm going to go ahead and start our commercial where I give people time to come in on the broadcasting before we get started. All
All
right.
right, all right.
All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good evening, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Ronnie and Yasheka's dating discussion. I am Yasheka, affectionately known as the artist of dating. And if this is your first time joining us, be sure to allow StreamYard access to you so that we can know who made the comment. And my handsome co host, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Good evening, everybody. Yasheka. My name is Ronnie Walker, master coach of exceptional dating relationships and sex. And we'll achieve all of those incredible and exceptional things through self development.
All right, all right. And I was just trying to see if we are live. I'm assuming we are. I hope we are. I don't see us on the site, but we're gonna keep on moving right along. I'm in a different space, and so yeah, I needed to try to figure out, make sure my everything is working properly. So, Ronnie, are you drinking on anything today?
I am. I am drinking on a orange drink. Let's just leave it
Orange
at that.
drink.
Just an orange drink.
Okay, okay. Well, I am still looking for us on the web, but while I'm getting that situated, today I'm just drinking on something simple, some water.
Okay.
Because just like one week to another week, I'm always on a diet. Um, so because of that, I got to make sure that um, I'm consuming water instead of anything else. And so we're not going to play any music today, Ronnie, because I've noticed that lately, whenever we play music, we're getting tagged for some of the music that's here on StreamYard, and I don't want to go through that today.
Yeah, I agree.
So, Ronnie, today we are discussing why marriage may not be the goal when dating. And so, in my commentary, or should I say my copy before when I was going live, I was thinking about this statement and regarding to girls and young girls, and I'm going to speak only from a woman's perspective. Um, Often, as young women, we are we're hoping to get married one day, right? We're hoping to have Prince Charming come along and sweep us up. We're hoping to have the crown, the beautiful white dress, whatever the case may be. But it does seem like marriage may not be on the table for, or may not be the goal for some people. And I'm speaking for women. And so, what do you think about men? Is that the goal for men? Or before we get into it, just, is that a yes or no, or it varies?
Ooh, it varies. And it's the why that I think can take the conversation to hours on end. So, yeah. But men are still, believe it or not, regardless of what you hear, that yes, men still want to be married. Marriage is a goal.
Okay, okay. All right, so let's get into this discussion. And again, if this is your first time joining us, be sure to allow StreamYard access to you so that we can know who's making the comments. And if you are watching us live, be sure to let us know that you are here. And if you're watching this on a replay, hashtag replay. And also in the script, I dropped it if you want to go ahead and watch the replay over on YouTube. So, Ronnie, let's get into this. So for women, right? I think that a lot of times, if marriage is not the goal for a woman, it's typically because of maybe life experiences, right? And again, I'm only speaking about what I could see it is. I don't know anybody necessarily personally that never at some point set out to be married, right? In terms of women. Now, does some of that change along the way? I'm sure it does. Okay. But I would say that for women, one of the things that I would say that makes the woman not want to be married, or that's not the goal, is because of the things that maybe she has seen in her childhood, and as it relates to marriages and things like that. What do you think about that?
I agree. And it's funny because, one of the reasons that this subject had come up, I'd been on 6 different consults, 3 different podcast panels, and this subject seems to be coming up over and over and over again. Because that's one of the questions that I'm asking. If we're, talking about dating, what is the goal? What is the end game? And so, what I have been hearing, of course, across different social media platforms, is this whole theme. Now, mind you, it's not just from the 20s and 30s. These are the 40s and 50s. Some who've been married, some have been engaged, and engagement called off, or have been married before. The men, however, contrary to what has been spread, is that the men still are looking for marriage, because men, we're looking for legacy. We're still looking for community, family. And again, I'm talking to intentional men. So these are the men that are in it for the marriage, to be blunt. I mean, they just straight about having marriage. Now, mind you, have been a couple who are against that. But here it is. It's the fear that the way they see it and experience it is because they see where the man ends up in the hole. They don't want to pay the alimony, and even if she's the one who cheated, or she just has a leave, if he wants it again. So for that, it's not more so the lack of belief in marriage. It's just that they just figure that if they're scared of picking wrong again. So again, overwhelmingly, I mean, when I really sat down and reviewed the conversations and the panels, it's a small amount of the men that just don't want to get married again, as opposed to those who still want to get married again. But yes, for those, it's not more so because of a bad situation with their parents. So one or two did, but for the most part, they figured that when it did happen, it was disastrous for the man economically, and even outside the emotional part of it.
Yeah, I think that's the case with the women. And I was going kind of like in my order, like if there was 3 reasons why women don't want to get married, I was going off, for me, there was 3 reasons. And I think, like I said, my number one was childhood. Definitely some things that they've seen in their childhood that kind of tarnishes their view of marriages and what they should look like. And so I would think that as they get older, that's something that they actually start to reconsider, even the ones that do probably, think that along the way. And then my second reason that I think women don't want to be married, or marriage is not the goal, is because of, like you said, about the men previous divorces. Because again, just like the childhood, that can cause a very traumatic effect on, or that could cause a very traumatizing effect on women, is if they've been married before and then got a divorce. Because in their mind, they're like, okay, just like you said with the men, what are the odds of them? They feel like, I didn't get it right the first time. Some people believe that it's a one and done. You know what I mean? If I get married the first time, it's like, that's it. That's all. I'm not going to do it again. Right. And so I think women sometimes will fall into that category because some of them are just like, I'm over the whole thing. I'm okay with just having a life partner. I'm okay with just having a special someone, as opposed to marriage, because they look at marriage as a very sacred, well, of course, most people look at it as a very sacred bond, right? And so others believe that whenever you get married the first time, it's for life. And if for whatever reason it doesn't happen, or they divorce somewhere up in that relationship, then they take the vow to never be married again, simply because they feel that the first one was for life, and when it didn't turn out the way that they wanted to turn out, they say, okay, you know what, I'm over this. And so before I get into my number 3, what do you think your number 2 was when it comes to relationships, or from the man's perspective, why don't men want to get married? Why not be the goal?
Well, they do, outside of the fear of, the alimony things of this nature, they look at the percentage and see, men, we really, again, we look at it logically. So we really look at it, and we dived into this. The number two was the divorce rate initially, the first time, the divorce rates, the first marriages. And then the second marriage that that person has, the divorce rate is even higher. So they're looking at it saying, well, damn, okay, even if I do feel that I found the second one, the chances of divorce, you know, is even higher. I said, well, okay, well, let me give you this. And this is the other thing that people don't look into. So matter of fact, let me just stop there. So the second part for them is the second time around, we know the song, it says so much better first time, but when it comes to marriage, a lot of them don't believe that the odds are still stacked even higher against men when it comes to marriage. Because again, Yasheka, if you look at the numbers and the studies, over 80% of the marriage are initiated by women. So again, here's the men looking at this like, well, damn, okay, if it's still high 80s that she's going to be the one initiated, and then the second time it's still even higher, then you know what, maybe this is something I really need to reconsider.
Now, before I go into my number three, when you say most marriages are initiated by women, what do you mean by that? Initiated? Are you saying that they're the ones
they filed the paperwork?
Mm-hmm. Women file the paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
So are they doing that with the man's consent, or are they just doing it up on their own and hoping that he'd say yes?
Many reasons. And here's the thing. From what I've seen so far, it's usually without him knowing. She just got fed up. She decided she's going to file, and they feel they can't go no more. So it's women that are filing. They leave in a higher rate.
Well, I would love to see that status, because women may be filing, but I just can't see that many women, when you say 80%, are taking the initiative and saying, you know what, I'm going to go out down here and file this paperwork. And I'm going to, because what I see in my mind when you say stuff like that, when stuff like that, I hear things like that. What I see in my mind, because, my mind is like this whole construction site, right? And so I look back and I see what that looks like for me. And so for me, that looks like women are down at the courthouse paying they $65, $75 fee. I don't know. It's been years. I don't remember how much it costs. And they're telling the person who's filing their paperwork, well, I'll fill in the name when I find somebody. That's how I see it occurring in my mind, right? And if it doesn't occur that way, then I would assume that although women may be the one filing the paperwork, I believe that they may become a little bit of they want to make sure that they get him let me rephrase that word. Let me do this before he changes his mind. So in other words, if a man says, I want to get married, or ask you to marry, or ask a woman to marry him, I can see the woman going out and to file the paperwork, right? But I don't see it necessarily being that they're doing it at an 80% rate without consent from the man. I don't see that way. I'm gonna have to, maybe I need to go take a trip to the courthouse and sit at the courthouse and see. Because I know that with my marriages, I don't think there was ever, I think that when I filed the paperwork in my marriages, it was both of us went down at the same time. And this was after both gentlemen asked me to marry them. So it wasn't like I was, because, I love them, but, it was one of those things where I wasn't going to just, be all presumptuous and just go down there and hoping that he says yes. This is after we had set a date and everything that I filed the paperwork, you know what I mean? Or should I say we filed the paperwork together? I didn't even, both times I went down there with my partner, not by myself. So, but anyway, that's that. I just didn't see how that made sense to me about a woman filing the paperwork. Because like I said, it's just like, I don't see women just running down to the courthouse. And then on top of that, I would like to see, being that I took some classes in statistics, I would really like to see who did they talk to, what year the statistics was done. And when we say women, are we talking about all women? Are we talking about a certain demographics of women? Are we talking about women that are over a certain age? Like, there's so many variables in there until I would not even, like, I would need to literally go in for me to really get a clear assessment of what's happening. I would like to be the one that goes to the courthouse and actually pull the documents, right? Pull the records myself and see, because when it comes to these online statuses and things like that, I find it hard to believe, because even my friends that I know have gotten married, none of them were like presumptuous about it. It was because either and I'm not going to say either. It was either they went with the man and just so happened she was the one that filled out the paperwork initially, or he went, or he was the one that told her, okay, go and do it, and you get it done. You know what I mean? So I can't see them just doing it on their own without somebody saying, yes, we're going to get married and this is the date we're going to be married. That's just me. Maybe I want to believe that certain things are still traditional. But I mean, if that's the case, I mean, and then on top of that, even if the man does file the paperwork, he still got to show up. So, at some point he must agree to it if he's there at the altar with the woman, even if she is the one that files the paperwork. He still got to show up. So that's just me. That's just a little old me and what I believe. But then my third reason of why marriage may not be the goal when dating is because I feel that some women have just given up on the idea that they will get married. Maybe it's because they've reached a certain age in their life or a certain stage in their lives. Maybe they have children already. And for them, it's like, you know what? I don't really care at this point. And so for some, I think that they just given up for various reasons. So I don't know. What do you think? What are some? What is the third one for a man?
I will have to say it's pretty much the same thing. There is, what was sad about two different gentlemen was just giving up on love. Part of them really did. You could, you listen to them long enough, you can tell they still wanted to, but the fear, they just said, Ron, this love thing, I don't think I was just picked to be in love again, and they just gave up on it. They really just gave up on it and thinking that they would find someone at their age. And these men were 62 and another one 56, I think it was, who just pretty much had given up. They just said, you know what? If I meet someone great, if I don't meet someone great, let me just go off and just enjoy my time with me. I'd like to meet someone. And this is what they kept saying. I'd like to meet someone. Don't get me wrong, miss. I'd like to meet someone, but this whole marriage thing, I don't know if I'm cut out for this. I've done it twice. I've done it once. I've tried to do it again. It just didn't work out. So it was a very, different reasons, but it's pretty much culminating to the same thing that you expressed.
Yeah, because I think it's usually, I really don't think too many people into adulthood with the idea of saying, I'll never get married. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't some people. I think that for the most part, though, what makes a person just say, okay, you know what, I'm just going to date and there's no end goal is because of the things that they've been through, the things that they've experienced or what they've seen. And a lot of times that is from previous divorces, that is from trauma that maybe they've seen as a child or even as an adult, or the fact that they just, like I said, they've been married before and or they waited so long that they're like, you know what, I'm okay with this. And so they kind of mentally prepare themselves for that special someone, right? And say, okay, I'm okay with having a special someone, but we're just not going to be married. And so for everybody, that depends on what it looks like for them. It could be simply, that special someone, they live in a house, you stay in your house, and then you get together, whenever, do things together. You have a drawer in my house and some closet space. I have a drawer at your house and a little closet space. And at the end of the day, you go back to, whenever we're no longer want to be in each other's company, you go back to your spot, I go back to my spot. And so for some people, I think that when they start to get a certain age, that's what reality looks like, because some believe that at this point, they can't even see themselves accommodating somebody else in their space. And so especially those ones who have never really been married or been in a long relationship, I think that for them, it's kind of hard to adjust, or they feel that it may not be something that they want to do necessarily. You know what I mean? And I often think about that for myself, because at this point I've been, I always tell people that for me, I believe there's two statuses, married or single. And so because there's two statuses of married and single, I've been technically single for 12 years, right? And I haven't lived with anybody in 11 years. And so when I think about that, I'm just like, you know what? I wonder what would that look like for me? What would that look like for me of me living with somebody and being married, or better yet, just, being married and then all of a sudden living together? Because I don't know which come first, the egg, the chicken or the egg, right? Yeah. Do you move in with the person before you get married, or do you, or do you just, get married first and then move in with the person? So that's why I say I don't know which come first, the chicken or the egg. But I just think that for most people, like I said in the beginning, most people don't go into adulthood with that in mind. I think it's just something that comes along because of other things that didn't happen. But for the most part, though, I don't think that most people go into dating with saying, well, I'm just dating. There's no end goal. I think it's just because of something that didn't happen along the way.
I agree. And then, it's funny because the reason this whole just came up, just again, funny enough, because it was the women that were bringing this up. I don't want to get married. I get married, and so I'm like, well, how does that look like in the world of dating? I mean, if you're online, online dating, is that something you're putting in your profile? When does that come out? And what was funny, how when these people described the first date, it's like they kind of took offense because the man is saying that these women, the men were saying, wait a minute, you don't want to get married? So why are you dating? Because so the man, again, it's an end goal. And so what, even if that end goal is not to get married, they're wondering why. They're backtracking, saying, well, I didn't see this on a dating profile. In our conversations that we had prior to the date, me asking her around, she never brought this up. So I'm assuming that this is, the thing. And then the conversation, had come up in each of those instances where it was this kind of time frame of dating, and how long do you feel one should date before taking it to that step or discussing marriage. And this is when it come up. And so the men was like, wait a minute. So then, to them, at least in this panel that I've had the conversations with, even the consults, where this isn't the whole purpose of dating to get married. And so now, as we talk about the evolution of dating, where that is an option, where people are now, now expressing, I guess, more, and I think it's always been an option, but just more, the microscope is on it now in terms of not everybody wants to get married. And so they're asking, well, what does that look like? Are you moving in with this person, that person moving in with you? Or you're going to keep separate houses? That goes into a whole nother conversation. In these gentlemen's mind, for them, it was non-negotiable. They had a good dinner, laughed and joked, and it was a wrap. There was not going to be a second date because they were in it for the marriage, for whatever their reason is, and they respect the woman's decision. And some of them did express it was a fear or things that happened with their parents and it didn't work out, and they want to have the same consequence, things of this nature. But this man is like, no, well, seek some help or talk to somebody or whatever, but I'm in this for marriage. And so they respected or honored her decision, but they, in each of those cases, I'm like, well, how did it go? She says, is it going to be a second day? Like, no, hell no. She's a wonderful woman, great time, but I'm not here to play around. And I'm like, okay, well, which goes contrary to listen to a lot of women online saying that where are these men at? And I'm like, they're there. That's what I'm telling you. I'm talking to them. I'm talking to these brothers. So yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. And even when we talk, because each of the cases we're talking about dating. And so when I talk about dating being fun, dating is serious. So where every subject that we may cover may not be the most glamorous or, fun, but it is something that has to be discussed because, again, we're talking about a whole new field of dating now and the mindset of dating and where this is going. So
yeah, I was gonna say something. I kind of lost my train of thought, but you were talking about the ideal of a man talking to a woman, and if she says that she doesn't want to get married, then it's not a second date. Let me tell you that now that I can agree with, because I've been on dates with gentlemen, and they said that they never thought about getting married. They never thought about getting married. They never wanted to get married. And so for me, if that was something that we talked about on the first date, or if we talked about it during a phone conversation, then I won't even attempt to go out on a date with them, even if they ask me, or if I'm on a date with them, I won't go out on a second date with them because I know what my goal is. And my goal is to be married one day. And so like I've said before in the previous recordings, I'm not in the business of changing anybody's mind.
Right.
And so if I come in contact with someone and they don't want to get married, and I know that that's my goal, even though they may be like, well, Yasheka, we could still be, you never know. Listen, I need you to know. I need you to know, because I've heard people say that, well, you never know. I might, no, I don't have time to play around with you and
Exactly.
your indecisiveness. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I need you to know if it is or isn't on the table, because if it's, even though it may not be with me, no doubt about it, but I have to know that our end goal is the same throughout this process of dating. And so again, it may not be me that you marry with, but is that something that you desire to do one day? Is it something that you are willing to make that change in your life? Or that's, I won't call it a sacrifice, but make that adjustment in your life to accommodate somebody else that's, because to me, marriage is about caring for somebody outside of yourself, somebody, just really respecting and honoring and caring for somebody outside of yourself. Because this isn't kids. I'm not talking about kids, because, of course, we're going to care for them first. We're going to get rid of that. We're just saying, of course, our parents or whatever. I'm talking about you choosing to love on somebody that's not family, or that you didn't give birth to or help create. You're choosing to love somebody.
Mhm.
And so for me, I need to know that the ultimate goal, and you're choosing to love me, is that you're choosing to be with me forever. And so if we're dating or we've been on a date and that's not your goal, then you can forget about it. I'm not going out again with you, because like I said, I'm not in the business of, especially at this age,
Mhm.
maybe in my 20s or whatever. Maybe I didn't think much about it. I don't know. But then again, I didn't really date. Well, I guess I did kind of date in my 20s. I didn't really date in my 20s because I was married or in between marriages. And so I didn't really date in my 20s. But when I became in my 40s, my early 40s, after I became divorced, after my whole stint of being married all those years, when I hit my 40s, it was like, I don't even know if I talked about that in conversations, because I think newly on, outside of my marriages, I didn't really, that wasn't something that was there for me, because I wasn't in that headspace, because I had been married for so long, although there was 2 marriages, they were on top of each other. And so I didn't really have that space of just being single, from the time I was 17 until, I was almost 40. So for me, I didn't really, so when I started to date again in my early 40s, I can't recall, because Lord knows it's been almost 10 years, it's been about 10 years. I can't recall really having a conversation with somebody where they, you know what? I take that back. I did. I was talking to one gentleman, and as a matter of fact, I remember now, this was maybe about 4 years, 3 years after my marriage, my second marriage. And I had to be around maybe 43, maybe 42, 43. And I remember talking to a gentleman on the phone, and that was something that he said that he wanted to do. And I told him, I don't want to get married. I was like, I just came. But see, for him, he had never been married. Whereas for me, I had been married, already before. And so that wasn't something that I was rushing into doing again. And not only that, but with somebody like that, of course, he had never been married, never had any kids. So yeah, he needed somebody that was young and, that was willing to do all that, because I wasn't willing to do any of that. But other than that, I can't recall like it being a thing in my early 40s, because like I said, I was coming out of relationships. But now, as I go into this next phase of my life, of course, it's back in the conversation. So.
That's interesting. No, for me, marriage has always been the goal of dating. Period in the story. I bought into whether people want to say it's the whole fairy tale or whatever it is. I've had I've been blessed that I've been able to see good examples of positive marriage, and I've seen what some would describe horrific marriages. being around people personally, professionally, family, friends, even my own experiences in terms of I believe in marriage. I just believe in marriage. I believe there's a place for it. I believe we were created for that. I enjoy my time. I enjoy my single time. Maybe just because I'm naturally an introvert in that space, but I can also do people. When it's time to do people, I can hit the switch and I could be Mister, network master, whatever. But when it's time to shut down, it's time to shut down. But in that space in relationships, one of the beautiful things that I do find, and I think this is something as I speak to other, self-professed introverts, is that there is a beauty of being able to be out with your business, career, whatever the case may be, and then come home to that one person who knows you better than anyone else and knowing what to say, to make you feel better if you had the rough day. And when she has the rough day, and then it's your turn. And there's just something that even with your if you're not talking, you're in the house together. She's doing her thing in the house, you're doing her thing in the house. I've been honored to have experienced all of that. And there's a beauty in that. And there's a solace in that. There is a freedom in that. That is still amazing me when people think that, oh, if I'm with someone, I've lost my freedom. I'm like, what the hell relationships were you in? I can't recall ever being in a relationship where I was not free. Now, not maybe because my vetting process, but nonetheless, I've never felt constraint in a relationship. I've always felt free. And I've always made sure that she continued to be who she is in all her authenticity. So to me, there's a freedom in a relationship that to me, again, this is Ronnie speaking, far surpasses the freedom you have in your singleness. Again, and I enjoy the single time, but in a relationship, there's a beauty there that again, and that to me is what marriage means to me. It means all of that squared. So is that algebra? I think it's squared, geometry, whatever it is. But you get my point. I am just pro marriage, and I get it. Some good, some bad, but I believe overall, regardless of what the rate is and who files first or last or whatever, I do believe that I've been around enough positive marriages to still believe in marriages. So for me, and as I coach the men and some women, but as I talk to men, being intentional, I'm talking dating for marriage. Now, again, how they choose to take that from that on, they can do whatever they want to, lifelong partner, separate houses, or whatever. But I'm talking for the space of throwing her over your shoulder and walking her ass down the aisle.
Caveman style, huh?
Yeah, there you go. That's because that's where we are right now. We're gonna if you're gonna evolve in dating shit, we're gonna evolve in the weddings too. No, we're not walking down. I'm just throw over your shoulder and go there and let's go.
Yeah.
Hurry up, Pastor. Wrap
And
it
you
up.
know what? And you made a comment earlier about men not having the freedom in their marriages, right? Um, when it comes to some people, I think that that's the idea of what a marriage look like. Is that you ever heard the expression old ball and chain, or get ready
Yeah,
to
oh
go
yeah.
old ball and chain. And so I think that because of that, people sometimes have this idea about what marriage is. And so because of it, they're choosing not to have anything to do with it because they believe that they're going to be restricted from doing some things. They're going to be not be, they feel like their self, like them being their selves, is going to be cut off. Like they're going
Right,
to live,
right.
and so, I mean, and in some relationships, it has been that way. In some marriages, it is that way. I know some couples where, you're not going to see you're not going to see one without the other. I mean, they're almost to the hip to when you see one, they're not going to be without the other,
That's true.
and,
Yeah.
and I feel like, hey, I mean, to each his own, because I'm like this. If from a woman's perspective, if you got a guy that you want to be around that much all the time, then that's amazing. And same thing with the guy. If you got a girl that you want her with you all the time, then that's amazing as well. because not everybody wants to be around that person all the time, you know. It's almost like a, you know, because some people want to have that space where they don't have to think about anything other than themselves. And so, yeah, that's where I'm at with it. But I'm gonna take a question here. Jay asks, "How long have you been married?" I don't know. He may, but I guess we both can answer this question. For me, Jay, I'm no longer married. I was married for a total of, I want to say about 20 years altogether. Yeah, about 20 years. And was it 20 years? Yeah, about 20 years. This is my math fault? You know, about 20 years from 18 to 39. So up in there, yeah. So up in there, there was like, I don't even think it was a solid year between when I was technically divorced from my first husband and then when I married my second husband, because we dated before my first husband and I were divorced. My second husband and I were legally separated, you know, filed through the courts and the system and things like that. But we weren't living together. We weren't even in the same country for a while. And then once I got divorced from him, because yeah, I divorced him in either 98 or 98. I'm sorry. I divorced him in 98. And then in 2000, I married my second husband. So maybe it was 2 years. It was about 2 years or so, maybe a year. Maybe it was a year. Maybe it was a year. Maybe 99 is when I divorced him. And then 2000 is when I married my second husband. So for me, I'm not married now. I've been single, like I said, now for about 12 years. And so I'm not married.
And I'm not married either. So.
Yeah, I definitely, he says, that I put in some time with marriage. Yeah, I definitely did. I got married the first time at 18 and I started dating him when I was 17 and we got married. He was 22 when we got married. And I was 18 and, you know, it was almost compare it to, you know, and this is sad to say, but it was almost like when you buy a starter home, right? When you buy a starter home, it's like it's the smaller home that you're gonna buy or whatever. And then as you evolve or you want more, you kind of get, you know, you get a bigger house. And that's how I saw my first marriage, you know, looking back. And the reason why I said it is because looking back, the person that I mean, don't get me wrong. At the time, I loved him. At the time, I thought we were going to die together. You know, we were going to be together forever so we could watch our grandkids come to the yard and play, like all that. I wanted all that. But of course, as time went on, I realized that wasn't going to happen. And so now as a 40, almost 50-year-old woman, I look at that marriage as like a starter point, like a starter home. In other words, because I had no idea what being a wife was about. I had no idea what was a husband about. Because in my mind, the relationships that I've seen with my grandparents and then other people in my family, they live that lifestyle where the woman sat at home for the majority of the time, you know, majority of what I saw, and the man worked and she took care of the household. And I knew that wasn't the life that I was going to live. So for me, although I've seen some healthy marriages, I didn't see them the way that I needed it to see it for myself, which was the ability to balance everything, the ability to have a career, not a job, but a career, the ability to have, this marriage and then have my self identity. You know, it wasn't all like, I seen marriages where everything about the woman was about the man or the kids. And I knew that I didn't want that for my life. I wanted more because I felt even then that I should be able to have them all, you know, and I felt like I shouldn't have to make a choice between being a mom and a wife or having a career. And so I chose to do them all, whether it was effective or not, whether it was the reason for the demise of my marriage the first time, I don't know. But I knew that for me to be able to have the things that I wanted in life, it was going to take for both of us to work. And so me being at home with the kids was not an option. So although I had seen marriages, I had never seen any that was like what I wanted. And this was, like I said, when I got married the first time was in 91. And so prior to that, there was no internet. IG, so I wasn't able to see these black hashtag black loves and things like that. All I saw was what I had grew up with, which was seeing the mom take care of the home, the husband and the kids, and the father going out and work. So yeah. Let's see what else he says. So Jay asked you a question, Ronnie.
Okay.
Can you see that one?
Sir, you seem to be pretty intelligent. Thank you. I am. Why would you not be married? You know all the rules. Why are you not married, or you're just dating? Here's what I tell people about marriage. It takes two people. So, and the other person has to want it as well, and they have to be the person that you know is going to be the pace. On two different occasions, I met someone that I had intended on being married. I'm talking ring and everything, for all of that. And it's funny because in both cases, I prayed that if this was not going to happen, or this is not well present, may present itself, and it did. In short, two very incredible, wonderful women, but there were some things that had to be taken care of, and there were some things I learned about myself in that process as well. That had I taken some time or knew some things, then maybe it wouldn't have gotten as far as it did, or maybe it would have. Who knows? But um, I am dating, and I will be married. That's just not doubt in my mind.
Okay. And so he says, okay, he said he understood. He understood that. So yeah. So I mean, I think that definitely when it comes to marriages, in order for it to work, be both people have to have the same goal in mind. And that starts from the beginning. That even starts from that begins well before you decide that you are going to ask that person to marry you, and whether the woman goes down to the courthouse and files the paperwork or whatever, right? I feel that when it comes to that, it's like from that beginning you need to be on the same sheet of music. And if you're not, then I guess that's why some people will take marriage off the table, because they're not at the point where they're ready to align themselves up with someone to say, okay, this is the goal, this is what we're doing, this is what we're working towards. Because like I said, and it's important to talk with that person, because everybody's vision of marriage looks different. Because like I said, you may come from a traditional marriage of seeing your mom at home, or seeing whoever your neighbor's mom's at home, and the father going out and bringing home the bacon, for lack of a better word. But you might want to do something different, just like me. And so I think that this is important from the very beginning, having those conversations about, where do you want a relationship to go? Is this something you're interested in? And of course, you're not going to know the answers all right away, as far as, yes, it's going to be you, or yes, I will want to marry you. But I think that early on in the conversation, when you're dating someone or getting to know someone, asking them about where they see dating going, like if it's going to be marriage, or do you just think this is something passing, or whatever. That's an early conversation, as well as, okay, we both established that we do both want to get married. Now, what does that look like for you? Because again, some people may see it and say, well, you know what? I want the kind of spouse that doesn't work, or I want the kind of spouse that does work. Just using that as an example. So having that conversation early on in a relationship, I think, will save a lot of marriages, because, and then on top of that, you stick to it, because somewhere along the line, you'll have people that will be in relationships, and then they will change what they want, or what they feel. And when they change, they want that other person to change with them. And it's like, okay, well, this isn't what we talked about in the beginning. Like, and of course, I'm still using the working as an example, and it's just an example. It might be a man that's in a relationship with a woman, and in the very beginning, he feels that, what, I'm okay with you pursuing your degree, or I'm okay with you pursuing your career. But then when she had that first baby or whatever, he's like, you know what? I changed my mind because I've come to the conclusion that I don't want my child to go to daycare. Right. And so I need you to be at home with the child. And then she's like,
Nah.
hold up. Why do I have to be the one to make that sacrifice? Why can't it be you? And then that causes static. Right. And so that's what I mean by changing. Like, that's a big deal to change something in the middle of a relationship like that. If it's same thing when people decide that they don't want kids or they do want kids, and then all of a sudden they decide, you know what, I don't want kids or I do want kids. You can't change those big things after you've married somebody. Now, I'm not saying this is the same as, you dyeing your hair from black to blonde. That's a little different, right? Because it affects
Yeah.
me. Granted, you got to look at it, but it only affects me. But when you're talking about something as big as our lives together and how it impacts our lives, I think that definitely conversations are meant to be had along the way and in the process. And then, I mean, all the time, all the time, all the time. And communication, I think that's the thing. And if that's the case, if you're not, in terms of marriage, if you're not able to communicate with the person that you're dating, then they're probably not the person that you need to marry, period. No matter how much you want to get married, no matter how much that person might be someone that does want to marry. If the communication is off from the very beginning, then it's going to affect your marriage. Trust me.
No, this is great. And I hope for those of you tuning in, this is a very heavy subject, but and it has everything to do with dating. Everything to do with dating, because she says, again, you want to find out where you both are. And here's that I thought was very key, what she said. What does that look like for you? Because what marriage looks like for me is going to be different than what it looks like for her. And if you haven't sorted that out, you're going to end up with those same situations, because trust me, I've coached those couples where he decided that he was going to change something and he expected just for him to wake up and she was going to be on board with that. And she's like, oh, wait, hold on. Where the hell did this come from? And it has happened in the reverse, especially when you talk about the children. Where one day she said she was going to have, and then next thing you know, it wasn't. So, like I said, the conversations while dating may not all be fun and bubbles and having cocktails on the patio of whatever, or the balcony of whatever. Sometimes it is the sitting down one on one and finding out, and of course, the sooner than later, of where you both are and what that goal is going to look like in dating. So thank you, Yasheka, because I thought that was some very good points that you brought out there.
And you know what? You triggered a thought process that I had, and I know I listed my three as the reasons why people, while marriage may not be the goal when dating. Another thing that I heard from men is that, well, I'm not even going to put a gender to it, because then it looks like I'm talking about one specific group of people. But I've heard that sometimes a person sends their imposter up until the marriage, right? And so sometimes people will say all the things like, I want to have kids, I want to do this, I want to do that. And then as soon as you cross that line or that threshold of marriage, they're like, okay, you know what? I decided that I don't want to have kids. Or,
Yeah.
I've heard that too.
Yes, I've heard that. Yeah.
Or people had these big goals and dreams about what they wanted to do with them, with their lives. And then once they get into a marriage, it's like, you know what? I don't want to do any of that now. I just want to be a stay at home, or I just want to do just this or whatever. I've heard that as well too. I've heard, so because of that, I think that actually makes a person like not like the sacredness of marriage, because they hear about this from their friends, and then it started to, and not addition to the things that they've heard before, now they're listening to this and be like, hold up, so you mean to tell me even if I choose to get married, that they might pull an okey doke on me?
Yeah, there you go.
Therefore, I want no parts of it. You know what I mean? So I've heard that as well. I've heard that as well.
No, you're right. Absolutely. And again, which then goes back to why some people don't, marriage is not the end goal, because that's just one less thing that they don't feel they are going to be, in the situation too. So again, and listen, the root cause is all going to be fear based. All of it is going to be rooted in fear. And just like, look, you know what? Maybe it's safer just to keep it at this, this level, and we're good. But here's the other thing about this. So whether you choose to get married or not, I think what people sometimes are really aiming at, Yashika, and again, this is just me speaking. Look, there's still emotions to that. There is still emotion to getting walking down the aisle, and there's still emotions of spending years with someone that you've gotten to know intimately in so many different ways. Either way, should it end, don't think that one is going to be more painful than the other. Now, we can talk about the added pain of the financial pain of that, but from the space of how your heart's going to feel to lose that person, whether they're married or not, leaving your life, again, this is just me. It's going to be painful. Now we can say, yeah, you still have the wedding footage and the reception, and you're doing the switchy thing with the cake and all of that. You have all that as well added to that. But even after that, you spent time, you spent years, you've traveled, all these other things. So I think sometimes some people feel that if you don't get married, you're not as vested into the relationship than if you were. And I think emotionally, you really are. I don't think you avoid any, I don't think you're going to make the pain any less. But this is just me speaking. But that's just something to think about.
Yeah. You know what? And let me ask you this while we are on this subject, while we have a little bit more time to go. Um, so, and it's just to switch it up a little bit before we go over our points that we've made about why marriage may not be the goal. So, my question is, why is it that people will judge when, okay, there's a soft spot between when people get married, or and I'm only speaking for women. There's this little soft spot, right? And what I mean by a soft spot, it's like 25, you may not want to be married yet, right? You want to try to start getting married about an age of 28 to 30. Okay. Now, this is for a woman, 28, 30. But Lord knows if 35 catches up to you and you haven't had no kids and you haven't been married, then there's something wrong with you. And so I want to talk about that because for some people, marriage isn't an option or it's not the goal. So why is it that when it comes to women, and this is I want to know from a man's perspective, why is it that if a woman is not married or have kids by a certain age, then she's considered like she's past her prime. She's why is it that when men view women that way?
Well, look, we're talking about a whole nother hour, but let me try to, because yeah, I've been asked this a lot in this past couple of days as well. You have to wonder, because if you're dating from 16, 18, and you're in your 20s, for some men, we have reason to believe that you've met that one prior to 35. Now, you may not have, but you may. So, why didn't you get married if you've, again, because men are the pursuers, they're hunters, they're out there looking to get married young because you want to have kids young, because you still want to be young enough to enjoy your life once they've left the nest. So there are some things, there is some logic to this. So if you do it in your 20s, then, by the time they're off and over, you're still young enough to go out there and, kayak, parasail, whatever it is you need to do. So you wonder, okay, so by 35, well, what happened? What happened between 18, because you got married young, and 35 that you didn't get married? And what you will hear a lot from certain women is that they had the opportunity, sometimes multiple times, to get married. And either A, they just felt someone was better out there, even though they've been in a relationship with this gentleman for some time. 2, they now want to do a career. And 3, they just wanted to explore life for a while and figure that at 35 they can come back and decide now, okay, I'm ready to get married. And so it all depends on that reason. and the logic behind that reason. So now, are we saying that you're totally washed up? Hell, on my page, Facebook page, I'm consistently showing women in their 40s and 50s. Yeah, hell, I've showed someone in their 60s getting married. But again, we're talking about possibility and probability. And again, see, we've got this mindset where women can like to think that they really control the whole situation of marriage. I says, okay, well, if you're the one getting on the one knee, then you can wait until your 50s and decide you want to get married. If you're going to do the one who's going to get on the one knee and you like the man, I said, but again, if you're the one expecting to be asked to marry, then again, now we're getting to the whole conversation of what are options out there for that type of man that you want. So going back to your point, it really all depends on the reasons as to why you decided to wait until you're 35 or older to get married. Because I know when I was coming up, hell, 18, 19, these women were getting married, guys making left, right, center. Because they want to have the kids while they're still young and fertile and less likely of complications. And know that the logic was by the time they're off to college or whatever, you're still young enough to go out there and, you know, still drive it like it's hot, and the guys can still, you know,
But
whatever.
see, here's the thing, though. This is the problem that I have with that, right?
And don't forget, actually, historically, that's been the case. People have been married young. That's just, and that's just not just in America. That's just a worldwide thing.
Right. But see, here's my thing to that, though. I would prefer someone to take their time about being married than to marry someone that they know they shouldn't marry, and then down the line you're doing like I've done, file for divorce, right? And so I don't understand, like, where's the sweet spot between those ones who are still young enough, but they may be starting to get on that other side where, okay, do you really want to have a child at this late in the game? You know what I mean? Because I've met some 35 and 36-year-olds that does not have husbands and do not have kids. And so in my mind, they're still young enough. They're still young enough to have all those things. But when it comes to some people in the world will start to look at them like as if something wrong with them. And their thing is, well, I didn't want to marry this guy at 18 and 19 because there was some things that I wanted to do. And although he asked me at 18 and 19, nobody needs to be to be honest with you, unless, I mean, in America in the 21st century, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, nobody needs to be getting married before the age of 21. That's just my opinion. Now, can it work out? Absolutely. Absolutely. But I just feel that there's too many things that you just, I mean, I'm not saying you're going to do them all, but I think that before the age of 21, that if you were going to marry someone at 18, and if that person truly, like, if y'all going to be together, then y'all can wait until you're about 21 before you get married. That's just my opinion. And I believe that's the reason. The reason for that is because 21 is the legal age, for example, right? Legal age to drink, legal age for a lot of things, right? And so because of it, I look at it and say, okay, well, that person hasn't still experienced some things that they hear people talk about, right? And so when you turn 21, you're like, okay, I can go to any club now. I can do anything. I can go anywhere. I ain't got to ask mom and dad. Like, everything everything is good in the world. Like, you free to do it. You are considered an adult. Yeah, we say 18 is an adult, but nope. 21 is my age, right? So if someone didn't get married at 19 because somebody asked them to marry them, I feel that's a good thing because they didn't need to be married. You know what I mean? They didn't need to be married. And so 30, after you've completed your college degree, you started to, make a little money, you're starting to pay back student loans or whatever. You about 30, 32, I think that's the prime time to start really getting married, or start having relationships and thinking about marriage and things like that. I just think that that's a good age. 30 is a good age.
I'm sure an argument can be made to that, However, here's the thing, and this is when we start getting into the 18 and 21 argument, because I've always been, I remember the day I turned 18, I was in South Carolina. They changed the drinking age to 21. So here I am. So I'm saying, wait a minute.
Wait a minute, you've been around that long that you remember when? Hold on, hold
I
on.
remember Pearl Harbor, but I wasn't there. I mean,
Oh my God. Okay.
so let me here's what I'm saying. It amazed me, and I've always had this argument. Again, I says, why is it at 18 someone's old enough and mature enough to join the military to kill people they don't know just because someone else said they should go over there and kill them, but not old enough to drink? You have to wait till 21 to do that, to
Mhm.
drink, sign contracts, those. So even that whole argument, I remember 18 having to sign up for it. Listen, so, but see, don't forget, Yashika, between the ages of, we can go say as early as 10 till 18, young boys are groomed into being what being a man is: hunt, fish, fix cars, work in the field, or if in the city, whatever. These are things that you go to school and then you still had chores. You understand responsibility and keeping a clean house. Okay, you protect your older brothers and sisters if you had your younger brothers and sisters or whatever. And it was the same for the girls. So it wasn't as if you knew nothing at 18. You usually knew how to cook, you know how to clean, and you had these conversations from the time when the woman, she got her first menstrual cycle, and now you become a quote unquote the woman. And so this is when they were prepping her to have a man in her life. And it was the same thing as a boy. This is when we get this whole thing about the hobosexuals and never moving in with a woman, because that was not the way it was, or that's not the way the order was. The order was for him to go out and get a house, and the woman makes it a home. But he learned that from young. Before he was 18, he knew he should have known how to do that. And then between 18 to 21, of course, if he decided to go to college, that's another thing. Same thing. But again, remember, in the days, and so now you've got these two people who are one groomed to be a husband, one groomed to be a wife. And then at 18, from 18 to 21, they were in school. Look at how many people who were married while they were in college, or just as after they graduated college. So it's not something that all of a sudden at 18, now you're going to start to learn how to become a wife. That was instilled in that young woman from years ago. And it's just the way, as a man at 18, he was groomed to be a man long before 18. So then at that point, children, marriage, children, and then you built a life together. So you may not have all figured out, but we also know couples who got married at 30 who still didn't have the whole damn thing figured out either, because they were not groomed to know what being a wife was and him being a husband was. So, or a man or woman. So we're talking about a different time, and so that's, I hope I answered the question, because this is something that I remember growing up, that was just something that me as a young man, we were consistently told. And you learned that from your dad, you learned that from your uncles, and this is what is, um, the woman didn't fix a car. She just didn't. That was things that he did. She didn't cut grass. He did. Wow, that was all. And this is things that he had to learn, that when he purchased his house or apartment, it was her who moved in after you got married.
Hmm. Well, see, you're definitely talking about a different generation, because
Right.
because I know for me,
So when you
uh,
ask that, but that was that mindset.
right.
That's where that mindset came from.
Right. And when you talk about the whole 18, and like Jay said a minute ago, the way the world is set up right now, too many people are now focused on marriage now as they were back then. And that's true, because now this is how I saw the childhood, right? How I saw childhood. I was prepared as a young woman. My mother, well, I learned to cook and clean watching the women in my family, right? And I was told to clean, by my mother in the household, because it took some of the burden off her. And then not only that, that was something that I needed to know as a woman. But the primary goal was to take some of the burden off the mother, okay? Because I'm a girl and I'm filling in. My brother wasn't necessarily made to clean or forced to clean. I really showed how to clean. It was just assumed that he could clean if he needed to, and if he didn't need to, he had some woman to do it for him. The goal for the men or the boys when I was growing up was not to hunt and fish. Their goal was to become a man as quickly as possible so you could make money, right? Make money as quick as possible because that's how you became a man. You know what I mean? It was like make money so that you can, that you can take care of the family. That was the mindset. And so, although I understand what you're saying, I think that the goals of the two genders in the household was different because you were stating that because of the military. That's been an argument for years about people joining the military and if they were told to do it, they would have to kill. But here's the thing, though, the part that society doesn't see that we see is that our 18-year-olds are not prepared to do any of that.
Right.
They're not prepared.
I agree.
So just because they're able to, they're not prepared.
I agree 100%.
So that's the same way marriage is. Although you are of legal age, you're not prepared to be married. You're not prepared. You're not prepared because, I mean, unless, like I said, I got married at 18. So unless you've been married at 18, I'm telling you what I know.
Well, were you groomed about that, though? I mean, again, because I gave examples.
I saw the same things you saw as a child.
Okay.
My mother was married to my father before I was born. Okay. I didn't really see their relationship, but I saw other people. My uncles were married. My aunts were married. My grandmother was married. Almost every woman in my family was married when I was a young woman. There are 6 girls in my family, 6 girls, 6 boys. Out of those 6 girls and 6 boys, when I was a kid, I would say up until the age of 10, 4 of my uncles, maybe 5. Well, I'm sorry, 2 of them were deceased. But out of the 4 that were alive at that time, 3 of them were married. Okay. Out of my 6 aunts, or with my mother, there's 6 girls total. Out of those 6 girls, my mother was no longer married because she had got divorced from my father. And then I had 1 aunt that wasn't married. Other than that, the other 4 girls were married, or 1 passed, but the other 3 girls were married. And then there's my grandmother and grandfather. So my point of the matter is that I seen more marriages as a young girl than I did single people. Okay. So I saw the same things you saw, whether they were good marriages or not, because I don't know, it was working for them. To each his own what defines good marriages. Right. But I know that my aunts had jobs. For the ones who had husbands, they had jobs. They didn't necessarily have careers, but they had jobs. So they were working. They did have children. All my aunts and uncles had kids except for 2 of my uncles that did not. But 3 of my uncles, I'm sorry. 1 was already deceased, and then 2 that did not. But even one of the ones that did not have kids, he had still been married since he was in his early 30s. You know what I mean? And so I saw this growing up. I saw the same things you saw. So I always saw it being instilled in the men in my family to make money and to my grandfather said work on cars, and he taught them how to work on cars. That's because he worked at the Ford plant, in Michigan. But I know that when I think about my boys, they weren't taught to work on cars. Everything my boys know about cars, they learned from me. You know what I mean? So, I mean, because I knew it was a skill that they needed, but I also taught them how to cook and clean, or tried to get them to cook and clean, because I knew that not everybody was going to have parents that was going to teach them that. So they needed to be able to, and what I mean by that, parents, in other words, a woman that they might get with in life, she may not, have been taught how to cook, how to clean. So I felt like my boys needed to have the basic necessities of that so that they would be prepared in case they didn't have somebody that could do those things. And so that's how I see it. I see it as the girls were taught how to do certain things because of this reason. And the boys were told to do things because of this reason. And one was to make a person a man, and the other was so that she can help around the house. I don't think it was about, I need you to know this as a girl because you're going to be a wife one day.
See, that's what that's the experience that I had. He was being grown as a man.
That goes on that she's going to be a stay-at-home mom, though. Then that means that more than likely she's going to be a stay-at-home mom.
Well, in some cases, yes, but don't forget, we're still talking, unless if we're talking about the journey of our, Black people in particular, there were the instances where, like you said, she didn't have a career, she did work. So, but they, again, in the end, well, hell, even young men now, no one's working on cars. I mean, it's just, it's a whole different world. So it was just, look, gender roles were a thing. They were clearly defined gender roles in those days. And so
Mhm.
that was when I just used a card, working on a card as an example, because that's just not something you saw a woman do no
Mhm.
more than you see men, and not that men couldn't, and there weren't men who weren't bakers, but in the house, the woman did the baking, and it's not that I did see men who did cook, but however, most times it was when it was on the grill,
Mhm.
they did the fish fry or whatever it may be, but the roles were clearly defined, but the whole purpose, and they says a man was, of course, making money, having a job, a stable income, a house, getting married, and children. That's what it was. That's how why you become, because part of being a man is getting a house, having a stable income, getting a house, having a woman, getting a wife, and having children. And then you go off into the sunset. So once the kids are going to college, and some of them went to military, whatever it may be. So, you know, you have to wonder, if you're talking about 35 is an okay time, then you have to ask that person, that woman, okay, so then for 15 years, how many years was it? Between 1835, 16, 18, 17 years. What were you doing in your life? Nowadays, to hear some women saying that's the time you need to be dropping it like it's hot, hot girl summer, things of this nature. Nothing do you hear them talking about. We're preparing for that age of marriage at 35. Marriage is not even an equation if you listen to some women. So then they're talking about getting the bag, getting that career, traveling all over the place. And again, and it's not until they've done those things, then they talk about considering marriage. At that point, they're no more clear on what it takes to be a wife than it was when they were 18. Although what a lot of men who will tell you, what they're hearing from 35-year-old women and older, is what they ain't going to do. I ain't gonna do this. I ain't gonna do this.
Yes, but isn't that how you learn though? Because if I was a person that had never been married before, right? But yet I've been in relationships and I get to be 35, I can simply say, well, I know I'm not gonna have a guy that doesn't have a good job or that doesn't make what I make. You know what I mean? Because I've been with enough people or I've experienced enough to know that I don't want a broke joker. You understand what I'm saying?
Well, then let me ask you
So,
this, then,
so
Yasheka.
I mean, I can't tell you what it looks like to be married with a man with money because I had never, if you've never done that before. But I've experienced, this. And I'm just using that as an example. The whole broke with no, me wanting something. So in other words, people say, like you made a comment about women don't really know men have heard women say what they don't want. Well, how else do we know
What they
what
won't do, what they won't do,
what
not
they
what they
won't do? But
won't
how
do.
else do we know what? Okay, I've heard women say that they're not going to do wife duties as a girlfriend. Like that is legit because why do I need to be as your girlfriend doing all the things that I need to do that I would do as a wife? Because there's an old saying is that why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free? So if I'm doing these things for you or doing wifely duties as your girlfriend, and we're not engaged, we're not anything of that, then yes, that's what I won't do. I will not do wifely duties as your girlfriend.
Well, then, all things being equal, make sure that you understand clearly, or have communicated what boyfriend duties are and what husband duties are. Because again, there are those men who say that's good, but what you haven't said is that what they want from the men is husband duties under the
Okay,
guise of boyfriend. So what do we?
give me an example. Give me an example
Well,
of
I don't.
'cause
Again, I'm only hearing.
I've never heard a
So
man
what is wifely
say that.
duties? What is wifely duties?
Wifely duties, for example, um, I'm coming to your place and cooking and cleaning or washing your clothes. Like if you got some stuff at my house because you visit and it's in a washing machine, I mean the hamper, of course I'm gonna wash it. But what I'm not about to do is come over to your house and tidy up and do all those things when, to me, like that's a wife duty. Like, you know what I mean? If we're not in this now, if we're in the same household, that's different.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're living separate,
Mm-hmm.
there's no way in the world I'm about to come to your house and do all these things to it as your girlfriend.
Okay.
If I mean that I'm just not. I mean, if I'm over there and something need to be cleaned out or whatever, then of course I'm going to do it. If I need to, use the tub and I have to use the tub and it needs to be cleaned out, of course I'm going to do it. but I'm not gonna do like on a Sunday was always my day to clean. I'm not about to clean my house up on Sunday and then come clean yours up too. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not doing that. You better figure it out. So that's what I mean by. So now, well, let me tell you what a man duty is, and that's why I say to me, when it comes to men and boyfriends, there are some things that I think is the same. Now, what I mean, and when I say that is this: will I cook a meal and invite you over? Absolutely, but don't expect it from me. That's the same thing when, and this is again, if we're dating and we live in two different households. Now, if I say for example, my car needs to go to the shop, right? As my man, you should want to take my car to the shop. To me, that has nothing to do with a husband duty versus a boyfriend duty. That's why when you say a husband duty versus, I'm trying to figure out what duties do a man
When you say
do.
take to the shop, you mean pay for it as well?
No, I'm not calling
Okay,
it.
see, this is where the communication.
No.
You've eloquently explained the two. And again, this is what men hear. And again, it's permeated throughout the social media sites where, and I'm sure Jay can attest to this as well as a man. Men pay the bills. She's not living with him, but automatically these women have these prerequisites of paying her bills. So if the car needs to go to the shop, he takes it and he pays for it. Food in the house, he takes her shopping, he pays for it. Now the hair becomes his responsibility. Her nails becomes his responsibility. And men are saying, wait a minute, that sounds like husband duties. Oh, this is boyfriend. So that's what I'm talking about, Yasheka. So that's why I asked you, because these are conversations that men and women are not having, or when they do have it, it's so cantankerous. It's crazy. So that's what I'm asking.
As a woman, if my guy, if I say, hey, I need some money to get my hair done, he can give it to me.
Absolutely. And he would have no problem.
I don't expect that to be his obligation, is to pay for my hair to get done, especially when I'm not rocking the hairstyle out with you every day. In other words, like, because if I didn't have you, how would I get my hair done? I'm not saying you can't buy. I'm not saying you can't do it, but it shouldn't be expected. Even if I went to the salon once a week or once a month, it should not be expected from a man. Can he do it? Absolutely. Just like I could come over to your house and clean it up for you, but it shouldn't be expected of me as your girlfriend. And so and even Jay made the comment here. He says, indeed, I've seen the power of marriage in the family and parents, but growing up and getting married and it didn't work out. I gave up on marriage and just rather date knowing I'm loved unconditional, so that I'm dating. So if I'm dating a person and it don't work, I can just move around. But then he also came back and said that he's been slacking because he's been paying women bills and buying cars and taking care of kids that wasn't his. And he was doing things as a boyfriend that was not that, and they were husband duties. And I totally agree with that. If you're not, now I'm not saying you can't help her out, just like she can help you out. What I'm saying? Like, I've been in relationships where I've gotten money from my partner and I've given money, loans or whatever. You know what I mean? I've done that. I've done that. I did that to my second husband even before we became husband and wife, because he needed it. So I did it. Now, could some women say that was foolish? Absolutely. Because it's like, you don't never, because I've heard the expression, because of what we've been taught when we were young, you don't never supposed to give a man money. I was told that. Never give a man money. But to me, I feel that it's one of those things where if the person is good for, in other words, that their heart is there and that they're in it, I don't see anything wrong with it. Same thing with, if he chooses to come and take care of my kids or feed my kids. Like for Jay, for example, Jay said that he was doing buying cars and taking care of kids that wasn't his, and he was doing those things as a boyfriend and they were husband duties. It depends on the woman that he was with. If that woman was one, because she may not have it like him to do those extra things to go above and beyond financially, but she may come with a lot of other things. She may say, I'm good with, for example, coming to your house every Sunday and cleaning it up for you. You know what I'm saying? She might want to do that, but it shouldn't be expected of her. Just like him, the things that he was doing for his girlfriend when he was with her, as opposed to being a husband, there's nothing wrong with you doing those things, but a woman should not look at him as being obligated to do so if they're just boyfriend and girlfriend.
Right, and I'm just expressing again.
Correct.
I've been on the panels and things of this nature because one thing I do know about men, and here I'm going to say it, intentional men, and I'm going to keep harping that when a man knows that she is the one, even before the ring or anything else, in an exclusive monogamous relationship, he has no problem of doing those things. He really does. Listen, I noticed the light came on in your car when I saw it. I went to put some gas in it. She's not washing the car. He's
Mhm.
getting it because he knows a good detailing guy. Why? Because he
Right.
made sure his car was detailed when he went to pick her up on the date. If that was the
Right.
case. You know, he knows if let's just say she go get her toes done, whatever the case means, she can't drive, or you women have those funny slippers that you go on and come back, he'll pick her up. He has no problem of doing. I'm telling you, I have listen. That's never been an issue for me or any other man when he knows that this is her
Hmm.
paying for it. What with the hair? Okay, here, get the hair done.
Right.
Now again, there are the men. Oh, he's not. It's not a wife. Why are you putting all this money in? Because we don't look at it as spending. We look at it as an investment and a woman we're going to spend the rest of our life with. That's just
Yeah.
how we see that. And
Yeah.
this shows her that we're good stewards of money, so we can do that and still, things get paid. You know, he knows how to treat us. So when we do a vacation, he does it the
Hmm.
right way. So again, yeah. Why take sand to a beach? Of course, take sand to a damn beach. What are you kidding me? I mean,
Right.
what the hell? I mean, and again, so this is what I'm talking about: intentional men versus men who's just going through whatever emotions he's going through. A man has, if he has the means, and even when he's struggling, he has no problem of producing the money that he wants for a woman that he's intentional about.
Hmm.
Period. End of story. It's just that men just get something a crawl in their side when these women, like as you say, it's like, no, you have to. You do this, do, and the list for us is super long, and then their list is like this time. And so that's just the thing. So we will do it. Men, trust me, men will do it. I've seen this over, and sometimes we do it to the wrong woman, the
Hmm.
one we thought was the one. But you know what? I always say to the gentleman, look, don't spend the money that you're going to regret spending. If
Right.
that's what it
Right.
is, then don't spend it. Then find someone worth spending the money on. But great, she's going to look good whether you spend your money or her money either way. But what I'm saying is that there's many a times I've walked by Chanel, I've walked by Gucci, and I know her dress size, I know the bra size, I know the panty size. I pick that up without her asking. No problem. I know the damn shoe size. So those are those things that you do for a woman that you know that you're intentional about, you're monogamous with, you're exclusive with, and you're going to spend the rest of your life with. So men have no problem. But ladies, if you listen to me, this whole your list of things is two things and his list is 40. I'm telling you, you're setting yourself up for the wrong man. I can promise you that.
Yeah. I agree. And I like when you made the comment that it's like an investment.
It is. That's the way
It is.
every man I've ever spoke to said
Yeah.
that. It's
Yeah.
it's an invest.
It
We
is.
don't. Yeah.
It
Mm-mm.
is. I mean, because at the end, then people want to say, well, what all a woman got to do? Offer sex? No, it's more than that.
It
It's
isn't.
more than just that. I mean, yeah, is that a big part of it? Absolutely. But men want to make it sound like, well, what am I getting out the deal besides some sex? Well, men are men, but they still like companionship. They like company. They like enjoy. It's so much better with going on vacation with a person than just anybody, right?
Yep.
What I mean? It's better that way. You can, I mean, it's just better that way. So no, men, you're not just getting sex from it. You're getting the companionship that you desire, because if you didn't, you wouldn't be there
But
one way or
gentlemen,
another. You may not admit to it.
make sure you're still getting the sex.
I
It's
mean,
just right. and
contrary to
plenty
what,
and plenty of it. Okay,
let me
but
tell
yes,
you,
but
I was
but
on
it
a
comes
panel
back.
last night where we talked about sex, and one of the things that they said was, what is it that men and women? The topic was, what is it that men and women don't understand about one another? And sex is important to men, and it's important to
And
women. Very much important. And Jay said that sex is the reward. I feel that sex is the reward for both people.
for both people,
I
absolutely.
don't think it's one way. I think it's for both people. Sex is the reward for both people, because trust me, it's so much better with it's so much better to make love than to you know what. You know what I mean? That's just my opinion, because Lord knows I've done both. But I will prefer the making love portion than just being in bed with somebody because, for the sake of, having fun, right? It's better when you're in love. And so I think that for both people, the reward is sex, for the man and the woman. And I think that it's an investment, because even if it's not sex, it's time. It's time that you're
I'm
investing
just
in.
going to say
That's
that.
something you can never get back. You can never get the time back. You can do things for me. I can do things for you, but I want to spend my time doing those things with people that I'm going to have a future with, or a potential future with, or in hopes of having a future with. And if it's just a placeholder, then yeah, I'm not. Yeah, what's the purpose of that? Because then you're wasting your time.
Yeah, I agree.
You're wasting your time.
I agree. No, and that's what it's because I've always told men, I said, listen, man, when you put in that time and that money,
Mm-hmm.
it always, with the right woman, it always comes back.
Right.
So if it's out of nowhere, she buys the trip. If
Mm-hmm.
out of nowhere, she buys a suit. I've come in and somehow, because she has a kid, the cologne is there. My
Mm-hmm.
favorite cologne. She noticed I was down. It's just those small things. And there's something about giving from the heart and not expecting that she picks up on, and I can assure you the sex is that much more better anyhow. So you get me on the sex part, that's a whole different conversation. But
Absolutely.
again, I just again, and I think what happens is I'm speaking to far, I'm listening to too far to too many men who, when they get into this whole conversation, what am I getting up besides sex? I'm like, what women have you been dealing with, dude? I mean,
Right.
I says, no, man, no, brother. If you have to ask that question, if you have like the whole, what do you bring to the table? I get what you're trying to say. I said, but obviously you haven't been asking the right questions or
Yeah.
in the right conversation with the woman, because if you are conversing and really intentional getting to know her, she's going to tell you that right off the bat. You're going to pick that up if you're listening.
Mm-hmm.
But
Absolutely.
that would, I've never, I said, but I do know by the end of certain conversation what it is that about her that is going to add value to my life, and
Mm-hmm.
what I am that I can see that I can add to life. So look, I can go on and on and on and on, but this whole thing about the husband wife. But again, back to the original theme,
Right.
Yasheka, was these are the things that if you're not looking to get married, if they you're gonna have to just accept that these are conversations you're gonna have.
Mm-hmm.
Because if not, you're both gonna end up in two different spaces and don't know what the hell happened. Whereas marriage, all you need to know is, okay, yes, I want to get married. You want to get married? I want to get married. You want to get married? Okay, so what does that look like for you? What does it look like for me? And
Mm-hmm.
is it going to work or is it not? But if it's not, and you don't want to get married, well, then that opens a whole nother can of worms, and you just need to be prepared, and not just surface answers as to why that is.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
again,
All right. Well, Ronnie, I think we've gotten majority of it out, but I'm just going to recap. And then before I recap, someone just says, Lisa Marie says, you get the intimacy, which is equal into me. You'll see not just sex. Absolutely.
absolutely,
You'll get the
absolutely.
intimacy. Absolutely. Absolutely. And not just the sex. Because I mean, to me, sex is when you're in love with somebody and you are having sex with them. To me, that whole act is just a very, very small part of it. It's about the rest of it, the intimacy, the connectiveness, the connection, the closeness, all those things, right? I think it's so much more than just about the sex itself, or the act of sex itself. It's so much more than that. And so, like Lisa said, the intimacy of it all, because you just can't get that from anybody. You just can't. You can't get that from anybody. You got to have to really enjoy it. You got to really have something there between you two. You know what I mean? Because if not, other than that, it's just a nut or a cum. You know what I mean? That's all it is at the end of the day. If there's nothing there, I don't guess Facebook will take my video down, or YouTube. But to recap what we've talked about, the question was, why marriage may not be the goal when dating, and some of the points that we did come up with. And it got to be the same way, because our you were speaking from a man's perspective, I was speaking from a woman's perspective, and our reasonings for it were pretty much the same, which was because of previous experiences where maybe they've been married before or whatever, or it could be from some type of childhood trauma or whatever, where they don't want to get married, or it may have just simply because they've given up on it. But I don't think that people really go into life saying, you know what, I'm not going to ever get married. Are there people out there? Absolutely. But for the most part, I think the majority of people reach adulthood, and at some point they may not necessarily think about marriage, but they don't think about not marriage. You understand what I'm saying? In other words, some people say, well, it wasn't even on my mind, but the other part of it wasn't on your mind either. In other words, well, I'm just going to have fun and date everybody for the rest of my life and have babies wherever. People don't just set out to do that. Unless you're Nick Cannon, of course, then you set out to have babies and that's it, and multiple babies with multiple people. But for the most part, most people want that goal of being married or whatever it looks like to you. You know what I mean? It might be cohabitating with somebody and y'all, legal up under the courts. What is they call it? What is that called? When you're living with somebody and
Common law marriage?
Yeah, common law marriage,
Mhm.
right? But the thing with the common law marriage, I will say this, that people experience that I know from a friend of mine. His mother was with the gentleman for like, I want to say 30 years. They were considered common law. However, when that man died, that woman didn't get anything. And the whole time that they were together, she never worked or anything like that. So her experiences were 30 years ago. So she had nothing when he died, because why? He had children prior to her, that when he passed, those kids came right on in there and took whatever they thought was his, as well as whatever, any type of checks that was coming his way or whatever, because out of 30 years, he never married her. So when people say they're going to do this common law thing, they have to keep that in mind, because even when it comes to hospitals, my uncle was sick and in the hospital, and he couldn't really make decisions about himself. But luckily, his ex-wife at the time, which is also his wife now, right? Because they got remarried. She still had his last name. Other than that, they was going to go to my grandmother to ask questions about him or permission to give things when he couldn't give consent. And so people have to think about those things, when they're choosing to just do common law, because I don't want it to be where I'm with somebody for many, many years and then something happened to you and I'm stuck with whatever, or I don't get whatever. I want to be able to be in the obituary as his wife. I don't want to be in the obituary as his long-term partner. If we've been together long-term, it's time to be married, period. So, but anyway, as I was saying, we did come where men and women pretty much look at it the same way, where it's not the goal if they've been through these things, but for the most part, though, men and women both, if it was up to them, they would get married. So did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yes, I just wanted to add, I'd like everybody to go to datingdiscussionslive.com, and there you'll see this podcast and vidcast as well as the others, and like, share, and subscribe. Also, you can go to the podcast if you just want to hear the audio, datingdiscussionspodcast.com, where you can also listen to the audio. So as you're driving your car, cleaning your house, or just sitting down and enjoying a beverage, you can hear the melodious voice of Yasheka, and whatever you want to call it, describe my voice as. So you can hear that as well. And on Facebook, Dating Discussions with Ronnie and Yasheka, as well as Instagram, IG, Ronnie and Yasheka. That's what I want to add.
Well, I appreciate that shameless plug. Thank you.
Yes.
All right. So for those of you who are here, thank you so much for joining. If you contribute to the conversation, we appreciate that. Keep coming back. We love the dialogue. We love the input. It gives us an opportunity to reflect or see things from however way, or even answer the question. And just also, if you have a question or something that you want Ronnie and I to discuss on one of our Thursdays dating discussions with Ronnie and Yasheka, then be sure to either DM him or myself or whatever, or put it below one of our videos and we will definitely get it. And if you have something you want to input about this discussion, be sure to do that as well. And if you don't have anything else, Ronnie, we will go ahead and end this segment. And it was a pleasure. And you guys have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.